was a kid on the farm. And the farm was, well, that was kind of interesting. It was near Hutchinson here. And did not only the chores, milking cows, but in the summers, in the fields, shocking grain, and also filling silos with corn, I was just a kid. When I would fill silos, corn was so heavy that my stomach would turn sour, putting into the silo filler. I wasn't very close to the family. I was happy to get away. I had a pretty rough life on the farm. I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. It was my choice because I wanted to get into the action. I got my uncle to take me to the courthouse in Minneapolis, where we were sworn in, and there put on the train. It's right on Washington Avenue there. Right across the courthouse was a train depot, which we herded there, and never left the train until we got into San Diego. I could outperform all the kids in our platoon in boot camp, because most of them were from Minneapolis, St. Paul. Most of them were athletes from basketball and football and like that. That's only for a short period. In a farm, you were tough all through, And so I did well because I could outperform the rest of my group. Training was rugged. It was on the Marine Corps base in San Diego, the main base. First thing I remember, as soon as we got boot camp, they took away our cigarettes. They said, you are men and not a bunch of babies that need pacifiers. And which I did. But at the boot camp training, I felt so good. My lungs felt good, and so after that, I never touched a cigarette after that, because I suffered with cigarettes. I would say that the Marine Corps made a man out of me. I don't know what would happen to me. There's so many loose ends in me, but the rugged training in the Marine Corps, I settled down. I knew what I wanted in life, and if I survived and through the war, I knew I would have a future. First of all, discipline and integrity. It's not by chance that they call the Marines gentlemen when it comes to escort women, because it seems that every Marine I found was a gentleman, and they behaved themselves as such. The Marine Raiders were a select group picked from the older Marine Corps. Most of them had experience in combat. Some had with jungle warfare. It was the Carlson's Raiders that had made this popular, because Carlson had served under the communist regime in China, learning to handle combat under jungle warfare. And his training made a big difference with the Marine Corps Raiders, because he had trained well, and because of their tenacity, the Raiders did survive in jungle affairs. Of those that survived, many of them, these were sometimes corporals and sometimes sergeants, who made commissioned officers because of their excellence in leadership. When officers died in combat, the sergeants or corporals took over leadership and continued the fight, which developed the resilience in the Raider Battalion. After basic training, I played in the United States Marine Corps band. The marching band on the base is they get up at dawn, as rising the sun. You march to the flagpole and put up a flag for the day and playing while you march, you know. And the same, it taps at night, you march back and so forth. Full dress Marine Corps, blue Marine Corps uniform, that's great. I also played for President Roosevelt when he came on board on base at that one time. We were in our Marine Corps green uniform. We stood 2.5 hours in parade rest, in other words, in an intention, with the hot blazing us, and we were all sweating. But when President Roosevelt drove into the Marine Corps base, we all played "Hail to the Chief." After that, I went to the Marine Corps base in Moffett Field, California, where I was Sergeant of the Guard. And my duties were to put on duty 7 men with their dogs along the airfield perimeter, each one with a Thompson machine gun. And the purpose of that was to secure infiltrators trying to get on the base and to destroy our lighter-than-air aircraft, which were housed in the huge hangars. It became very obvious we were not only getting short of men, and so I volunteered to go overseas. I volunteered for the Marine Corps Raiders, and I was given a squad of brig rats, people who got in trouble, got court-martialed, and if they volunteered for service overseas, their records were cleaned up. So being an acting sergeant, I took a charge of that, and it was very interesting. When on Camp Pendleton, we got on some extended maneuvers and high altitude, mountain climbing, really. I could outperform and outrun any of the guys. And after doing it, I earned the respect of the men that I deserved to be the sergeant. And so, although some of them gave me problems, yet they respected because they knew this was the only way they would get their freedom. And they all signed, went with me overseas in the USS American ship, which had a new name for when they were overseas. And they were. I was in charge of them as went to New Caledonia. And when at New Caledonia, they turned them over to the Raider Battalion, and they were dispersed to different areas, and I never seen them again. This was a staging area for the 1st and 2nd Marine Battalion. At the time they were in action, when I arrived, there was in Bougainville and Makin Island, and it was the Fort Marines were on Makin Island, and this was the contingent of the China Marines, which were the Fort Marines, and which held the island being occupied by one of the first victories in South Pacific that Japanese could not take.
In Guadalcanal, it was to renewal and retrain and refresh us battle the latest techniques on what we have learned in being in combat, and it was also be better equipped for the future attacks we would be involved in. The natives of Guadalcanal hated the Japanese because they abused the natives and used them, and after that, when we came back, we had set up an arrangement with them. If they would go in and bring in the heads of the Japanese, we would give them garden tools like rakes and hoes, and so they could take care of their plantings, you know. And in the middle of the camp, they formed a pit about 12 by 12, I think it would be, and real deep. And we never knew what in the world was going on, why a pit right in the middle of the camp. But soon we found out. When the natives started bringing us the heads of the Japanese, and they were buried or put into that pit and covered with lime, and then put that. And so there had been several times that the natives brought in the heads of the Japanese that they killed. When we were going into combat, we were aboard ship, and then the bullhorn on the ship said, Sergeant Lorence, report to the chaplain. And I thought, what in the world? I was just a corporal. Right. The chaplain wanted me to be his assistant when he was get communion to the troops on board ship. I felt honored that he would want me to help him with that. And I had a good rapport with the chaplain. He was a really, really godly man. And in doing so, the troops on the board ship became jealous of me and saying that I was a flunky, the chaplain's assistant, you know. And there was not a title. I was asked to do that. Right. I helped do the communion, and then formed a sing-along on board ship of the troops, which songs like "In the Garden" and different old hymns that we most of them knew, and so we had a really powerful presence of God there. But I was being attacked by this, and I didn't know these guys if they were attacking me because of a Christian or the position I was played. But then I realized, as I look back now, they were scared out of their wits. They knew that they might face death, and scared that, not realizing I was scared as well, you know, right. Doing that. But that must have been on Guam, because when we landed on Guam, I took my troops up the hill and to the airfield, and one of those guys that was harassing me saw this happening. Then I didn't stay back with the chaplain as a flunky. Yeah. I was fighting like the rest of them. And he said, well, hi, Sergeant. I thought, you yellow belly. Yeah. That's another thing that I remembered, and I have thought about that. Although in the revelation of what really happened, you know, how scared they were, I didn't realize that they were so terribly scared, and it's understandable. And yet you had to go. When you get up, just embark on the ship, you go. And the bullets are flying all about you, you still go until you reach your destination.
I think the one that I probably remember most is on Guam. We were dropped off on the base of the island by LSTs, and then we made our way in and going up the mountain. This was the base of the mountain was the airport. It was our place to go climb that mountain and take the airport. There have been times that we went up a few hundred feet, found people shooting at us from the back, realizing they were Japanese, into which we had to turn around and clean out the pillboxes and see that everybody was taken care of before we moved on. And of course, we lost some men too, moving up there. So it was an inch-by-inch fight up the mountain until we reached the top, and I barely got to the top, and here I find a Japanese tank. However, by that time, somebody with a bazooka took care of it and silenced the tank. These are the little guys, they're small. Probably 2 men, I would imagine, that they would handle. But they were like paper. They just fell apart once we got a good charge into them. And when we reached the top, I realized also that this was not just an ordinary airfield. This was one of the airfields that was a landing spot for U.S. Pan Am Airways. This was one of the stations that it was their hop across the ocean. They would stop at on the way back to the United States or going out of the United States. There is where probably we really fought. I fought hardest because they were tenacious. The Japanese did not give up. The only way you silence them is to kill them. And then afterwards, when we did capture the island, then they would jump off the island and commit suicide because they were afraid to face the Marines. The island of Guam is like on a plateau, high above terrain around it. So we came on the side where the airport was and climbed the banks, airport, and we secured the airport first of all. It was all shot up, everything, and this was also a Pan Am station. When we barely got in there, a Navy plane came and landed on the airport. I thought, those crazy fools, what are they doing landing on the airport when we're still fighting? And out of that plane jumped Admiral Nimitz. We were just shocked. God, what is he doing here? But as we looked about it, then they just came to support the Marines. They were fighting for their lives out there, And the Navy pilot was in a big hurry to get going again after they landed. The airport there was a staging base for the Japanese to occupy Australia and New Zealand because we were getting that close. So they had sent hundreds and thousands of men there to take it back from us. And one time during the battle, we killed 10 Japanese to one of our Marine Corps men. It was bloody. But another good feature about it, they had been on it so long, the Japanese were losing their food supply. And as a result, many of them died of starvation because they couldn't get any food. I think the worst moment in battle I remember was when we were in Guam. Japanese tried to infiltrate our ranks and would, while we were sleeping, and try to knife us or kill us in our foxholes. So I had to sleep, or try to sleep, with a knife in my hand. So anybody tried to come over the foxhole to knife them right away before they could get me. And that was a nightmare. I remembered for a long time afterwards. How you could smell them, you could hear them breathe. They were so close. It's a matter who gets who first. And we always had our bayonets ready. Our bayonets, by the time we came there, was a knife on the end of a rifle. And stab them and get them out of the way. The Japanese, when we were on Guam, the shells bursting overhead all the time, and lighting up like daylight, all around you. And my concern, you didn't dare move. We were in foxholes, but at times I just thought, am I going to crack? Because it was so tense, so consistently at it all the time. But this was war, There was fighting for our lives, and of course, daylight came, and then we grouped, and the officers took over, and we moved on. But I remember one time. This was about the time when we were voting for the President of the United States. That was Roosevelt. And here comes the Japanese into camp. It was just no arms and anything like that surrender. Well, that's unusual. Japanese surrender. Those who were responsible said, "Stay back, don't come close." Didn't come more than 50 yards from us. Blew up. Tried to catch and get us. As a bell trick anyway to kill Marines. We had a guy by the name of Lou Allen. He was a smart ass. He was going to go in. We said, "Stay down, don't let go ahead." And he wouldn't listen to the sergeant in charge. And he went up to this pillbox there. They opened up, they cut him right in half. Smart ass, thinks he knows better than anybody else, So he's a dead, I think he was one of my men. Remember the corpsman? He was a character. When we were in combat, he had regular pliers, and he goes kick open a dead Jap's mouth. There's dead gold in him. You can pull them out. He had one of these little sacks, like it's full of gold. He said, "I'm going to be a doctor when I get out of this." Bob Law, but he was a good man. When somebody was hit, he was right there, patching him up. He was a Navy medic. After they had secured the island, and where they were sure that the enemy gone, in other words, then we were taken back on board ship and shipped back to Guadalcanal, where we trained for additional combat. And at this time, we were the 1st Marine Raider Battalion Provisional, because that was the end of the Raiders after Guam. Well, this was blowing up unstable TNT. Well, that was on Guadalcanal. What we did, we'd have fish fries. So we would drop I wasn't part of that because that's dangerous stuff. Those who handled TNT would drop areas where there was heavy population of fish, and they would drop these unstable TNT, and of course it would come bubbling up, fish were everywhere. So they collect the fish in baskets and had a fish fry. They needed men for loading and unloading of ships to know where each item belonged on board ship. And that was done by using templates per square inch, and if it is a gun or ammunition or gasoline, and where on the ship this would be loaded. And this was very vital, because we had to take in consideration if we were hit by a torpedo or something, where would it best survive? It was too hot and humid during the day, but we worked nights. And we had a great big, what it was, a regular panel, plywood panel. They would set up big tables, make big tables, and there we had the dimensions of a ship that was going to be used.
There's another incident when we were on Guadalcanal. I had practice of swimming underwater with just snorkels, and I get pretty far deep, swimmer. And we had a ship that was at beach. There was a Japanese ships. It was blown. The whole side was blown apart, So somebody had dared me to swim through the ship, which I did by myself, and I had no problem because the hole was so big you could put tanks through it or trucks. There was no problem with that. And after that, there was a Navy nurse that wanted to go with me, and so she was a officer nurse. And I thought, well, if she wants to do that, okay. She was a good swimmer, and we took her through. But then I got in trouble with the officers. I was fraternizing with the female. It was nothing of the sort. I just helped her go what she wanted to do, And so I always thought that was funny. I wasn't disbarred or anything like that, but I was warned.
Personal friend that I made when I was in the Marine Corps was Private or PFC Bob Borman. He was an unusual musician. He played piano accordion, was a trumpet player, and we became close friends. And afterwards, by his example, I became a Christian. I saw the godliness in him. And I, of course, went into combat, and I wasn't through. But he stayed behind he was an expert marksman, rifleman, and he was on the firing range. And but just before we went to Okinawa, he said, "Well, I'm going to be coming over, Ed. I'll be meeting you." Unfortunately, he barely got on Okinawa. He got a bullet right through his heart. Left behind a wife, beautiful wife, and all that talent went to waste. I couldn't understand. I didn't think that I had much talent. Why I was spared and he was taken. But I better understand it now. We went to Japan through the Yellow Sea, and all my life I've never seen waves as big as those. Our ships, convoy ships, would disappear in the waves, completely disappear. And we thought they landed in to the bottom, but we finally made it to Tsingtao, China. And this is a stone's throw from Beijing, which is the capital of China. Our duty was to secure and put under arrest all the Japanese soldiers that we found there. So we made a stockade and then put every Japanese soldier under stockade. And then when time came and our ships were empty, we would ship them back to Japan. My duty was part of the transport quartermaster. I was part of bringing in the ships. They were coming in from sea, putting them into berths, or where they would take their turn unloading when the docks were free. We evacuated American missionaries who were behind the lines. That they insisted that every American missionary went back to China, or back from China, because it was in a state of war, and the communists were taking over the country.
Oh, that's right. I had two servants. I had a manservant that came and did my bunk and everything, straightened out did my bed and everything, And his wife did all my laundry and did my tailoring of my shirts, skin-typed shirt. The Chinese couldn't do enough for us and realized that I was a Christian. They wanted me to come back and to serve the Lord in China. But of course, because of communists, I never did get there.
We went through the northern part of the Pacific Ocean, and halfway through, our ship broke down. This was one of the new Victory ships that they had built, and the turbine completely broke down. So we were and it was near Alaska somewhere. It was so cold you couldn't go on deck because you'd freeze to death. So you went in the stuffy below holes until that cleared up. Half of the crew coming back was seasick. So the first thing we got into Seattle, Washington, the naval base there. Got plenty of pork chops and ice cream and all those good things that the Navy does have, The horror of it, the war, and also the fact that I killed human beings. I couldn't get it out of my mind. In fact, I would walk the streets in Minneapolis and just begging somebody put me away before I killed myself or killed somebody.
We were staying with Grandma, and there were 2 bedrooms upstairs. I had one, and Edmund had the other. And in the morning, I would make his bed after he got up, and the bed was just torn to pieces. He must have had a very bad night. And then he would have his meals, his breakfast, and he would run outside after he was done eating, and it all came up. He couldn't hold any food down. I didn't see it, but Mother told me that they were walking down the street and the sidewalk in Minneapolis, and the car backfired and he just fell right down on the sidewalk. Any noise like that, it sounds like a gun going off. Yeah. Mother just about got a telegram saying your dad killed in action. Did you hear about that? He stayed behind to help someone that was wounded. He carried him back to camp. And looked at him and says, "You're supposed to be dead." They found his dog tags by this dead person. But he just stayed behind to carry someone back to camp. Otherwise, Mother would have gotten the telegram, but they were able to stop it in time. That would have been a shock.
That would have been.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of his friends were killed. But he told us that that's what he wanted. He wanted to die. But God didn't want him to die.
It was a war where it was soon forgotten. And forgotten what all we did. And furthermore, because we were so stressed out, I personally clammed up. I didn't talk about it for years. And nobody really wanted to know what we did.